If I'm being real, half my interest in this guy is because he's hot. Okay, but like I'm definitely not alone in that, because I've seen a lot of noise about this guy, especially from the more casual community, but sadly that's not really true on the content side. A lot of content creators are pretty content just calling him mediocre and moving on, and I mean, I'm not gonna buck the trend. If I'm really being honest with myself, he is mediocre, but that doesn't change that a lot of people like him, and I also think the ways in which he's mediocre make him sort of an interesting character. I mean, a character underperforming has certainly never pushed me away from wanting to use them. I still don't think I have enough knowledge or content for a full 101, so we're reviving the quick guide. I only ever made one on Lanyan. It did not do very well, but given how little IFA content there's been, I figure I can at least chip in, give a little rundown of his kit, and talk about my experience playing him for the past week. So let's start with the talents. His normals are very simple and not all that important. Normals are a simple 3-shot combo using his IFA gun. Yes, that's what he called it. I asked him personally. And for his charge attack, he kneels down and does a big, more powerful shot. All fine multipliers, but nothing special and again, not really important. His skill is really where almost everything is at, and it's what I'm gonna spend the majority of the video after this talking about, but let's just go over real quick so you kinda get what he does. He jumps up in the air and gets carried around by Kukuku. He slowly consumes Night Soul points. If he sprints, he can move faster while consuming them faster. And his normal attacks fire off more gunshots that will automatically target the nearest enemy. Holding the attack button, he'll enter an aiming mode where if you don't have an enemy to lock onto, he'll just fire straight forward like he would with a normal attack. But if we do find an enemy, he'll show that he's locked on with this mark, and we also find out that hitting shots while he's in his skill state will heal not just him, but the entire party. These shots apply animo and therefore swirl every other hit. The attack damage scales off of his attack, but the healing scales off his elemental mastery. You can see it is really not a lot of healing, but we'll talk about that more in a bit. His burst is, it's Heizo's burst. One big hit of animo damage, and then it does a pseudo swirl, where if it comes into contact with an enemy that had an element on them, it'll do a second instance of damage of that element. I wasn't exaggerating. It is just Heizo's burst copy and pasted. Both instances of his burst damage only scale off of attack. When it comes to his Ascension talents, I'm actually going to talk about them in reverse order. For his A4 passive, very, very simple. He gets some elemental mastery whenever someone triggers a Night Soul burst. Gets you some extra healing, gets you some extra swirl damage. Not complicated at all. I need to go somewhere else because there's some weird saurian making a horrible noise here. Aoife will save you. His A1 passive has a little more meat on its bones. While he's in his skill, he'll grant a reaction damage bonus to his entire team. This bonus affects swirl and electrocharge damage. And it's important to note that this bonus stacks additively with elemental mastery, not multiplicatively. So you don't benefit more from it by building the characters on your team with more EM. In fact, because elemental mastery is one of 2 stats in the game with actual diminishing returns, you get less out of this damage bonus by building your characters with EM. But at the end of the day, you don't really have to factor it into your builds at all. Just think of it as some extra free damage on your reactions. What's interesting is what this bonus scales off of. That being total current Night Soul points. Not maximum Night Soul points, total current Night Soul points. So as you're in your skill and your Night Soul points are going down, you're slowly losing damage bonus over the course of your rotation. And it's this passive that basically ties him at the hip to Auroron, which you're probably gonna play them together anyways, so it's kind of just cool that they have this synergy. Aoife wants characters in his team that have consistently high Night Soul totals that don't drop very low, and he wants characters that will trigger electrocharge and benefit from that bonus. That's basically only Auroron, because Aoife has to be on field for this bonus to take effect. That knocks out all the other Natlan on-fielders, and the other off-fielders like Eon-san, Seatlali, even Mawika to an extent, all of their Night Soul points slowly decay over time, whereas Auroron has a lot of different ways of gaining it and can generally keep it pretty high in teams with Aoife. Yippee, you don't have to make up excuses to play the boyfriends together, they were designed to be played together. Now let me go back to talking about his skill. As mentioned, the healing on it is very, very, very low. You can see we're literally talking 500. Admittedly, I don't have him fully leveled yet, and he would get a tiny bit of extra EM from that ascension, but I do have a pretty high talent level of 8, and I have him on a pretty high EM build. Okay, the flower could be better, but almost 90 EM on the feather, double main stats, and a healing bonus circlet with a little bit more EM in the substats. This is not a low investment Aoife by any means. And yeah, you can see he's on VV. This is essentially his signature set in the archetype that he was built for. Auron is already going to be holding scroll, so he doesn't need to. Technically, you could use him as a scroll holder for like Shao or Wanderer because he's the first unit that can give an animo bonus. I wouldn't recommend it, but it does work. So why does this matter? It really only does in the context of Farina. Being a full party animo healer, Farina is pretty obviously Aoife's second best in slot teammate. Not second best in slot, you're not choosing between Farina or Auron. You're kind of going to use them both. But if you don't have Farina, or you just don't want to use her, maybe you're using her on the other side of Abyss or something, then you don't really have to worry about this. Even though the healing is low, it's consistent, and it's full party, it should be enough to keep you topped up. But if you are using Farina, it can often be difficult to keep up with the drain from Farina's summons, especially if you get interrupted like that. But even so, when I'm just standing there spamming shots, you can see Farina herself was basically going neutral. This is because her summons take a percentage of all your character's max HP. So on characters that you're building HP on, like Farina herself, Aoife has a harder time healing them back up. But weirdly enough, that's kind of why I like him. Genshin's healing is so strong that it's basically a binary. Either you don't have healing and you just have to be a skill god and dodge everything, or you do have healing and you're pretty much unkillable. Hoyo kind of dipped their toes in the water when it came to Iansan. She has this very tiny baby heal, not nearly enough for Farina. Anybody who uses Iansan consistently knows that. It's more of a safeguard that still incentivizes good play and doesn't let you get away with getting hit as much as you want. But if you do get hit once or twice, this amount of healing can potentially get you back up to full. Aoife's healing is still a lot better than Iansan's, but a lot worse than basically anybody else in the game. And I like that, because if you want to play him with Farina, you're gonna have to do a lot of weird min-maxy stuff and even some gameplay alteration. I mean, the thumbnail of this video is making fun of that infamous Ziox Sijuin thumbnail, maximize your healing, but that's actually where I find Aoife to be a cool character. His healing is so minimal that you do have to maximize it if you want to get good use out of it. I've considered crowning this skill. I don't crown healing or shielding skills. I probably am going to in the future. Not because I think he needs it, but just because I like Aoife and I would like him to be a little stronger. And I would actually feel the impact from crowning a healing skill, as compared to most other healers where a level 8 talent is already gonna overheal you and make you nearly unkillable. Level 10 isn't gonna change that. The simplest path to making Aoife's healing enough for Farina without doing any weird gameplay or build optimization, just go Prototype Amber. I don't do it because it physically hurts to put Prototype Amber on a character who already heals, but this pushes him over the line to be a bit better. You can also go for Constellations, although I don't recommend going for Constellations on one specific 4-star. Also, this entire video is at C0. The big hitters are C2, C3, and C6. C1 is energy, doesn't really matter all that much. His burst isn't all that great. C2 gives him a bonus to that passive talent that buffs swirl and electrocharge damage. This makes it so that just Auron and Aoife alone are basically always going to max out this passive. And also the limit for the damage bonus is increased. C3 is skill levels, so obviously that helps a little bit with his healing. C4 makes his suction field on his burst last a little longer, and also gives him some EM when he casts it. This can make him a little more annoying to play because before C4, burst isn't really important at all, but the 100 EM makes it a little more tempting to use. C5 is burst levels, not really a big deal unless you're building him for crit. And the best one, it's C6, sadly. He gets a 50% chance to fire an additional bullet when he's in his skill. Deals 120 of his attack, which is half of what the skill's multiplier is at level 10. Not all that great on the talent damage side. More importantly, this counts toward his ICD and it heals. So on average, it'll get you 50% more healing and 50% more swirls. Although keep in mind that it is a 50% chance. So potentially this con could give you a lot more or a lot less than 50% extra healing or swirls. 50 is just the average. And it makes him a little better at exploration, but like whatever. But yeah, for healing in particular, C3 and C6 are the big hitters. C6 in particular, but you shouldn't go for C6 of 4 stars on the first banner that they are released on. If you get C6 by chance, I'm very happy for you and not jealous at all. Weapons, I have Wandering Even Star. Probably not advised on this team. Only person who's making use of it is Auron. Venti is in here for friendship. Likely I'm going to swap him out for, Xingqiu or something, who then I'll actually have a reason to run Wandering Even Star. It's a fine enough option. Fav is always good. Sac Frags can be good for the big EM substat, but isn't particularly great. Although yippee, everybody celebrate because his best in slot is actually a craftable. Triggers a lot of Electro Swirls and some Electro Charges on field, so he easily gets up the full damage bonus. And because he's your on-fielder, you don't have any issues with the 6-second uptime. Hakushin Ring is basically just a 20% damage bonus to your whole team. Even Star is comparable, but a little worse in some ways, a little better. The offensive buff is much worse than Hakushin's damage percent. Attack is only usable on some characters, and notably not Farina, who you're going to be using in most Aoife teams. And also the buff is a lot numerically lower in the first place. But the EM subset does help with Aoife's healing and his swirl and electro charge damage. Anyways, the weirder ways that you can make his healing better. The first one actually comes in Farina's kit with her Endless Waltz passive. If your on-fielder gets overflow healed, then she heals the entire party. Let me cheat with the NRE here. When combined with Aoife's existing healing, this full party heal, it can actually help him keep up with Farina's drain pretty handily, although as long as you don't get hit, like me, a dunce. Additionally, Farina's burst, as well as giving damage bonus, it gives healing bonus, specifically healing received, which not a crazy bonus, but it can help a lot with keeping up high healing. Relatively high healing, I should say, because it's never going to be really high. This one's a really weird tactic. It's definitely not reliable, but it's funny. Something that I've observed about Aoife with Farina is that it's very punishing to get hit in these teams because, you know, for Farina's little pet things to do all the damage that they want your entire party to be above 50% HP. Oh, well, Aoife's passive is not making this easy. Automatically heals anyone who drops below 40% HP. Guess I can go to a domain. I'm not gonna have to try against these guys. They always hit me during my setup anyways. If you get hit during your setup and one of your characters drops to below 50% HP, come on, do it. Oh, perfect. Aoife is gonna have a very hard time bringing them back above 50. You see, he did it, but it wasn't within the rotation. Although, alternatively, I mean, this isn't really a tip because it's not something that you can rely on consistently happening. It's just a thing that might happen and is cool. If you get hit not below 50% HP, well, dude's dead already. I can still talk about it. That counts for Farina's fanfare. You see, I haven't done any healing, barely did any drain, but I still have 70 fanfare, which that extra bonus that you get from that initial chunk of fanfare getting hit can give Aoife just that little boost that he needs to make Farina Aoife teams HP positive. I guess the point that I can come to with this and regarding all the other little things that you can do for his healing, I find that with a decent high investment build that has a fair amount of EM and also notably a healing bonus circlet, I think I'm going to keep a healing bonus circlet on him in all the Farina teams that I use him in. With this build, he is just barely not enough healing to keep up with Farina Drain. But there are enough little extra things that you can do to boost his healing just that tiny extra bit, including, you know, leveling his talent a little more, or if you're lucky, getting constellations. With any one of those little gear swaps or tricks that I mentioned, he becomes HP positive. Am I coping to make a character that I like sound better than they are? probably a little bit, but I do think it's really cool that basically for the first time in Genshin, I'm having to think about my healing and factor in how much I heal into my rotation. I can't just brain off and know that I'll be healed to full. So yeah, that's been my experience with Aoife, and I've honestly been enjoying him a weirdly large amount, more than I thought I would. Most people are probably going to click off, but I'd like to give a few kind of closing thoughts, I guess. I think he holds basically the exact same position as Heizo at this point, not just because they're the same element and the same weapon and they have the same burst, although that does have a lot to do with it. Both of them are essentially side grades to Sucrose in their best use scenarios, who are worse without their relevant constellations, and only get better when they have said constellations. And not significantly better, just a little bit. They're also both significantly harder to make work than Sucrose. They both require a bit more field time than Sucrose. Aoife has his weird healing min-maxy things, and Heizo just needs a good crit build. Neither of them are bad, but the existence of Sucrose and her being so incredibly good make them a lot less relevant. But if you want to make him work, he has a pretty clear role, and he's quite good at it. Hope you all are enjoying your Aoifes, and have a lovely day.
you